información, llámanos al 809-455-1227. Agropecuaria Vida Silvestre, donde la vida y la naturaleza se encuentran.
Atención mujeres de Verón Punta Cana. Descubre Syal, tu tienda de maquillajes, cosméticos y productos de cuidado personal, donde la obra de arte eres tú. En Syal podrás probar todos nuestros productos con testers totalmente gratis. Solo trabajamos con productos originales para garantizar la mejor calidad. Visítanos en Plaza Canatown, local 102, Avenida Barceló. Syal, administrado por su servidora Yorbelis Paredes. Te esperamos para que te veas y te sientas increíble.
Every Friday at 7 p.m., Punta Cana Hits presents What's Up Punta Cana with Christy Maggio, the #1 English talk show in the area, with the best that the Dominican Republic and the rest of the world have to offer.
Good Morning Bávaro, el programa por excelencia para los municipios de la zona turística, con un equipo de verdaderos profesionales.
Que tienen 2 y 3 drones al mismo tiempo volando para averiguar lo de otro.
Con entrevistas y comentarios que marcan la diferencia. De lunes a viernes de 7 a 9 de la mañana. Solo por 90.3 FM Radio Bávaro. Y en puntacanahits.com, YouTube, Facebook y TikTok. Good Morning Bávaro. Una producción de Punta Cana Hits.
Lo mejor es churrasco, costillas y baeña. Lo mejor es churrasco, costillas y baeña. ¿A dónde Pula? A pura leña, suadero, doña Pula. A pura leña, vaya voy yo también. A comer esa carne, vaya voy yo también. A disfrutar esa carne, todo es queda probado. Lo come la carne, todo es queda probado. Lo come la carne. Si va para allá, hay una seña. Si va para allá, hay una seña. Que voy a comer a pura leña. Que voy a comer a pura leña. A pura leña. Yo voy a comer a pura leña. Yo voy a comer.
Asadero Doña Pula, Santiago, Bonao, Santo Domingo y Punta Cana. En verano hay buen clima, más tiempo libre y los días son más largos. Sin embargo, desde que inicia el verano, aumenta el calor y la factura de la luz por un mayor uso de los electrodomésticos en casa. Encendemos y usamos más los aires acondicionados por el calor. Tenemos más tiempo en casa y los antojos y el tiempo con la nevera abierta aumentan. O la televisión se queda encendida mientras hacemos otras actividades. Controla el gasto energético apagando los equipos, desconectando electrodomésticos que no necesites y reduciendo tu consumo para que la factura no venga alta. Ahora en verano cuida tu energía. Para más consejos entra a www.cepem.com.do o a nuestras redes sociales @cepemrd. CEPEM, energía que cambia vidas.
El Aeropuerto Internacional de Bávaro será el aeropuerto más moderno del Caribe, que trae turismo, empleo y desarrollo para todos los dominicanos. Será la puerta de entrada de grandes oportunidades. Juntos somos AIB, Aeropuerto Internacional de Bávaro, el aeropuerto de todos.
No te pierdas las informaciones nacionales e internacionales todos los sábados en Trúcamelo Radio. Con los comentarios de los expertos, el maestro Víctor Ramón Rosa,
Todo lo que ha sucedido en la República
la internacional Carmen Borja
está en el centro.
y la profesional Natalie Rodríguez.
Sobre este tema que está muy, pero muy...
Sábados de 6 a 8 de la noche, solo por 90.3 Radio Bávaro. Y por puntacanahits.com, YouTube, Facebook y TikTok. Trúcamelo Radio. Una producción de Punta Cana Hits.
¿Para qué estar dando vueltas si todo está en un solo lugar?
Papelería Tipo Llana.
Papelería Higüeyana tiene todo lo que usted necesita para equipar la oficina, la escuela, el hogar y mucho más, con los mejores precios, calidad, garantía y el mejor servicio a domicilio. Estamos más cerca de usted, en Bávaro, Avenida España, entre el Centro Médico Punta Cana y Comoma. Teléfonos 809-552-0884 y 552-0717. En Verón, frente a Montilla Motors, Plaza Roque 3, teléfono 809-455-1565.
Papelería Higüeyana, en precios, calidad y servicio, la más completa.
Papelería Higüeyana, ayer, hoy, mañana y siempre, la más completa.
Introspección, preguntas incómodas, reivindicación, descubrir nuevos nortes. Eso y más encuentras junto a Raquel Salas y Alfonso García en Perros Verdes Podcast, donde encuentras lo que no buscas. Perros Verdes Radio Podcast llega a ustedes gracias a Mystic RD, Punta Cana Running, Alma del Caribe, Reenfoque Positivo, Doctora de la Rosa, en Aestheticana, Radio Oficial, Punta Canahits.
Every Friday at 7 p.m., Punta Cana Hits presents What's Up Punta Cana with Christy Maggio, the #1 English talk show in the area, with the best that the Dominican Republic and the rest of the world have to offer.
All right. Welcome to What's Up Punta Cana with Christy Maggio, and I am really excited about today's guest coming to us live stream all the way from the other side of the world, California, Silicon Valley. And so his name is Sumeet Syal, and he is in the tech industry. He's a tech industry veteran and also executive coach, currently serving as the vice president and general manager of global sales and marketing for Intel. And he is also the co-founder of 3 Doshas. With over 30 years of experience in tech, Sumeet has led global teams and negotiated major deals, including industry leaders and industry giants like Apple, Google, Dell. And today, we're going to focus more on the leadership. We're going to focus more on 3 Doshas, and we are going to talk to him, and he'll be sharing with us how the principles from yoga, and I know I'm going to say this wrong, Ayurveda, can unlock career and leadership success. Through his 3 Doshas blueprint, Sumeet helps professionals align their strengths for enhanced decision-making, resilience, and career growth. So I'm really excited to introduce to you all this evening Sumeet Syal, and he's coming to us live stream from California. Think Silicon Valley. Are you in Silicon Valley, Sumeet? How are you?
You bet I am. Hey, Christy, so nice to meet you. So nice to be on this show. Thank you for the opportunity. I am in sunny California. It's beautiful here today.
Very nice. I'm really excited to talk to you today about so many different things. You know, it's interesting because, you know, I'm friends with your son who is 17, and you know, he's going to be one of the new writers, co-authors of the book that's coming up, and I love him to death. And when he asked me about interviewing you, and then I read your bio, I was like, whoa. And then he says to me, well, Christy, how are you gonna introduce him? I'm like, maybe a genius. So
well, that's so kind of you. First and foremost, I do want your listeners to know that Sachin, my son, my younger one, is a super fan of you, Christy. So first, thank you for the coaching and mentoring that you do. And also, I wanted to say I'm inspired by the work you do in your foundation. And, you know, the work that you do is probably the most important work from my perspective in helping, from an education perspective, just young audience. And I do want to sincerely thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you do in what's your foundation, but also helping my son.
Thank you so much. I mean, you know, I think I learn more from them than they learn from me, to be honest. I really, really do, because like they in with the confidence that Sachin has, and with all of these things, I love working with young people, and you guys have done a tremendous job, you and your wife, and so you should be very proud of yourselves for the job that you have done with him.
That's very kind of you. I know he's a big fan of yours, so I do want your audience to know that you do have major fans out here in Silicon Valley.
Thank you.
In California. So
thank you. So let's start. I want to start with my first question, and usually I don't read off a script, and that's the only reason I have my phone in my hand at this moment. But I don't want to get the questions wrong, because there's so many things that I want to get through before time runs out. And we think, oh, it's an hour, but an hour goes by super fast. So I want to start back with your early beginnings, because you were born and raised in India, near the Himalaya mountains, and so it must have been quite a unique experience. So can you tell me a little bit about your childhood, about your upbringing, and how that led you to both the tech industry and Three Doshas?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. So it's very interesting. I grew up in all parts of the world, and I would say the biggest predominant impact that I've had in my life, as I think about my upbringing, was probably growing up in the mountains in India. And I did grow up in the mountains, in remote mountains, Himalayan mountains. My father was a civil engineer, and he would always go and build these hydro dams. And a hydro dam is essentially, think of it, you take a river, turn it into a dam, and turn it into electricity. So the places I grew up in were just very remote parts of India, places where the military would have access to, or somebody in the government would have access to. And I think that had a very profound impact in how I grew up. So if you take a look at today's kids, today's kids grow up with lots of things, lots of toys around them. I grew up with the elements of the nature, right? So think of it ravines, think of it moss, think of it sticks, wood. And I just, it was such a fantastic time. And I distinctly remember it because there was no schooling. I was just growing up with the elements of nature. And I think that made me a super curious human being. I would literally spend days just, looking at squirrels, crickets, and I think what happened there is it just grounded me in ways that I needed to, from a very young childhood, to be very curious about everything in life. And that led me to be curious in every aspect of my life. Then my parents moved here when I was 15. And I came to the United States with nothing but a curious mindset, a curious thought process. And everything that I've done in my life has been with that curiosity about everything, whether it's going into tech, whether it's going into leadership, my education, just every aspect of life. So I think it had a profound impact. And I also think that had an impact. And by the way, I grew up with a lot of this knowledge of Three Doshas, or yoga and Ayurveda, as I was growing up, and it was kind of, call it within the family, or just things you hear from your cultural heritage. And I never really put the two and two together until later on in my life, where I just started saying, man, this stuff makes a ton of sense. And how can I then inspire, the knowledge that others before me gave me to the next generation that's coming after me?
So how is it then? Because you mentioned that you didn't go to school. Were you, at that point, were you homeschooled? How did you learn? You had the curiosity. You went out. You did it. You saw your father doing all of these incredible things. Where did the education part? And because we know a lot of the great minds of the world and the great success stories, a lot of them didn't have formal education. So where did that part come from?
Yeah. No, so I did have formal education. These are very early years of my life.
Okay.
Like, think of it from the age of about 3 to about 6,
Okay.
right? So think of it I would say the most impressionable age, where
Okay.
a child is actually processing the elements into every aspect of your senses, right?
Right.
So I did go into, call it, formal education, and the truth is this: I really wasn't very fascinated with education. I was more fascinated with curiosity of life and being curious about things. And even when I've done education, it's funny because I went to, like, for example, an MBA school, and I still distinctly remember, a professor gets up in this call and he asks all the students, he breaks us up into five and asks all five students, what are you here for? And everybody came in with exactly a recipe of exactly what they wanted to get out of the schooling. I literally answered the question saying, I'm just here to learn. I've heard about business. I want to learn. I'm curious about how business works. And I think everything that I'm talking about from the younger years, and I know you work with a lot of children and we talk about child development and just how people pick up things. I think I picked up things from the nature, from the elements, from just how watching, observing, and doing things from that perspective.
I think curiosity is really important, and I think it's something that, it can go two ways in the sense of curiosity is something that allows you to have that desire to learn. But it's interesting because we are conditioned also in our society, as you know, in America, there's the expression curiosity killed the cat. In other words, to hold that fear inside of you so that you don't go and overstep your boundaries, or you keep that curiosity in because something bad might happen if you express it. What are your thoughts on that?
I think people that are curious get into trouble are more bound to be successful. This is just my personal belief. I think what you'll notice is people that are usually curious will push the boundaries. And I think as they push the boundaries, and you mentioned fear, and I think fear is beautiful, but fear can also hold you back in a lot of ways. I think people that are more curious will actually push the boundaries to understand things. You know what? And most of the time they'll get in trouble. But I've always found that these are the people that are actually going to be the innovators. These are the people that are going to come up with something unique and different. They're not going to think within the box. They're going to think very differently. And I think it's actually a superpower from my perspective as I think about curiosity.
Yes. When you go through school, did you do most of your schooling in the United States or in India? And I'm talking like elementary through high school. How old were you, did you say, when you came to the United States?
Yeah, I was 15 when I came to the United States, and I've had a very, call it a diverse upbringing. So my parents moved actually 9 times before I even settled in the United States.
Wow.
Which literally meant every year or 2 years I would be changing schools. And, most people would find that very hard, especially I know in the US, everybody says, hey, you don't want to move because you want to just continue on the same schooling. And I always grew up with this, it's okay. It just makes you resilient. You go through the hardship of making friends, then you move to the next place, then you move to the next place. And then I moved to the United States, and I've kind of kept it with me in my career. I've kept it in my leadership skills. And I think resilience can be a virtue that could be used in so many different ways. And all of that came from, my upbringing in Indian schools to different types of schools. By the way, I even went to Christian schools, convent schools, American schools, traditional schools. And all that's doing is it's actually building flexibility in your mind of how you perceive things as the schooling is coming at you.
Yeah, I mean, actually, when you look at it from that perspective, you had more experiences, which means ultimately by changing that many times, you had a lot more learning. And a lot of times today, people are like, oh, well, I don't want my kids to be uncomfortable, or I want to have them in the best school system. So we're going to move to this area because we know they have good schools there. But I think that's one of the great things that probably was a benefit to you. And like you said, a lot of times today, kids are coddled as opposed to learning that agility, learning the flexibility, resilience, all of those core essential skills that everybody calls soft skills. That I don't like soft skills as a term, but those essential skills that many don't have coming out of high school or coming out of college. And you were able to build those simply from your personal life experiences.
Yeah, spot on. And I 100% agree. I think the more experiences, the more the learning curve, the steeper the learning curve, the more scenarios that you're actually having to learn from. And I think it just makes you a better, more resilient human being.
Absolutely. So you went to university where did you go to university?
So I came here when I was 15. So my parents bring me here in the middle of high school, sophomore year, middle of school term, and say, let's go figure it out. And it's funny because I come in here, I love the United States. I think it's awesome. I'm trying to learn, curious about people, cultures, and everything. And I'm trying to apply to colleges, and I apply to all the colleges, apply to a lot of UCs, and all of my grades don't exist because they're either from India and they don't count. So I'm applying, and I end up going to an undergraduate school here called Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. And it's in the Central Coast, about 3 hours away from the Bay Area. And another fantastic school, very diverse for me because I come from an Indian heritage, and this is predominantly a very Caucasian school. So again, gave me an opportunity to kind of put myself into a place where I could be very uncomfortable and learn as much as I could. And it was just a fantastic experience for me to pick up the American culture that I needed to and assimilate in ways where I could feel like I was truly American. And that led to me then, finishing my undergraduate, I decided to go into engineering, and then kind of led on to then future studies that I finished here in California as well.
What made you choose engineering?
It's actually funny you ask. I actually picked engineering because my father's an engineer.
Okay.
He's a civil engineer. And I grew up in a household, and it's very typical in Indian households where, in that generation, in that era, everybody just said, hey, you either got to be an engineer, or you got to be a doctor.
Right.
Everything else is kind of just, don't worry about it.
Out the door.
Right. Right. And if you think about it, your parents are doing this from a perspective of they're thinking the best for you. And they know that those are paths that are going to lead you towards success. So it was like, okay, do I want to do engineering or do I want to go into medicine? It was pretty clear because I had a math mindset, a very logical mindset. I said, okay, engineering is probably it. But Christy, I finished engineering and I realized very quickly in my career, I wasn't going to be an engineer. I very quickly realized that even though I finished engineering, my skill set really applied more on the business side, more into marketing, business development, more into people-oriented jobs. And I very quickly pivoted, literally, right after undergrad, I pivoted into more of the business side. And I realized that has been the key factor in deciding my career path to then my leadership journey.
Interesting. So where did then, so you did your MBA. So then where did the tech part come in? Is that come in as part of the engineering side, or is that something that you upskilled as you went along and noticed, okay, internet is coming up, tech is coming out, everything's moving to digital, computerized. Is that when you said, okay, I need to be a part of this too in order to, work in this area?
Yeah, so this is a great question. So I'm talking here 1990s. Actually, it would be 92 timeframe. I'm coming out of high school, and I used to work at Fry's Electronics, which is an electronics store. I don't know if you have Best Buys or something. Think of it as an electronics store. And I was basically learning technology at that time through selling, working a summer job. And that led me into, again, the curious mindset just said, well, how do computers work? How do these technology things work? And then that just kind of leads you into saying, this is interesting. Why don't I just study it? Because if I have to be an engineer, so I decided to go into computer engineering.
Perfect.
And that's kind of how it all started. And then, that kind of leads you, that curiosity mindset is very important from my perspective in terms of whatever you pick. It doesn't matter the profession you pick. But then again, you go through your studies because you're just at that time trying to get your degree or trying to get your education done. But then you got to put your mindset into it to say, is this the right thing that I want to pursue for the rest of my life? And I think I realized very quickly, right after I finished it, that I needed to go pivot into something where my energies were going to align to what I do for the rest of my life.
How did you make that choice? Like, because I know that a lot of times, even with young people, it's like, well, they're going through the motions, they're trying to figure it out. And you at that point in time, you're saying, okay, I need to align this. Like, I like this. I'm curious about it. I'm interested in it. But where was it that you said, okay, what was the process of you getting to that point where you're like, okay, now I know that this is what I need or what I should be doing?
Yeah. So, Christy, this leads me to kind of, how I came about this whole schooling of three doshas that I'm starting to do. And this is something very near and dear to me. I call this the you need to know your energy, who you are. Once you know what your true nature is, you can then deploy that nature in anything you do. At the end of the day, we're nothing but just energy. You bring an energy into any environment you go in, whether that's your school, your job, your family. And the concepts of three doshas essentially tells you that, hey, you're nothing but a combination of energies. And when you take those energies and you deploy it, make sure that those energies are gelling in the environment that you're working in. By that, I mean, energy is such an amazing concept if you think about it, because it compounds. If I bring great energy into any environment, other energies are going to combine and it's going to have a compounding effect, right? And what I came to realize, is I was working in an engineering job and my energy was just not gelling. I was like, okay, this is weird. Like, all my life, I thought I was going to be, till that stage, I was like, I'm going to be a hardcore engineer. I'm going to go do this. And, people do this all the time, especially when you're a college student. You kind of know, you kind of say, this is what I'm going to do. I've picked it. I'm going to go after it. And then you realize, hey, hang on a second, but my energy's not feeling right. And that's the moment where you got to be honest with yourself to say, okay, I may have ended up in the wrong place because my energy is not gelling, but that doesn't mean that that's the end of the road. That just means you take your energy into the right environment and deploy it in ways where you can then have that compounding effect to make it grow.
So, and I find that really interesting because I see so many people just like searching, especially young people. What am I going to study in college? I have to go to college. My mom and dad want me to go to college. That's what they said. And they told me I have to be XYZ, right? And this was actually one of the young girls that I was mentoring in Jordan. And her mom and dad wanted her to be a doctor. She is brilliant in tech. And she got a full ride to University of Toronto for technology, computer science. She's big into robotics, and she turned it down because she got so much pressure from home, and that makes me sad because she was so good in that. That's what her passion, that's what she loved, but she wanted to please her parents, right? And that's a story for so many people. Like, they'll get into college for 2 years and then all of a sudden they're just kind of like, I don't like this anymore. And mom and dad say, well, this is what you got. You're sticking with it. This is what it is. Or they'll go through 4 years and realize it's not what they want to do. And then they're like, well, I study it. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. When you had that, how did you make that shift work for you so that everything didn't, I don't even know if there's a word, disalign, unalign, like, so that it worked together?
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that story, because I think that story is a very common story. And Chrissy, I literally mean it. I mean, I go hang out at dinner parties and I'm talking to people and I hear it again and again, even in my age group, where they feel like, hey, I ended up doing this because of the pressure from either parents or society or whatever, right? And I think this happens to a lot of people. I'm pretty sure it does. But I have some hope here for everybody, okay? Because it doesn't matter at the end of the day what you end up getting a degree in. It's just one small aspect of your life from my perspective. And I have been in leadership roles where I have worked with people, right? They've come in through my group And some of these people don't have tech backgrounds. Some of these people come from just like completely different backgrounds, but they do an exceptional job at grasping technology in ways that most people that have actually gotten all these credentials in technology can't do, right? So from my perspective, the hope is that a lot of these kids that are going through this, it's okay if you've picked something and you're going through it with you. There's hope. Now you said, how did I maneuver through it? And this is going to be the hard part. Before you can get misaligned, unaligned, whatever you want to call it, right? You gotta have the wherewithal to go through it. So for example, I'll give you my example. For me to finish engineering and then say I want to go into sales or business development, right, was not an easy feat, right? People that are in those professions are very skilled at what they do, right? You gotta be able to take, failures. You gotta be able to take the downfall and say, it's okay. I've made the decision. This is the path I'm going to go on. I'm going to stick with it. I'm not going to give up on it. And every failure is an opportunity of learning. I always explain this to my kids. I said, FAIL is first attempt in learning, right? That's it.
I say that
just
to my
understand every
students,
time you fail, you've learned. And it's just like an education. You're just getting an education in that failure. And that's going to make you better and better and better every time you go into something else. So for all these people that feel like, hey, I made this decision. I finished what I finished what I did because my parents or other pressures made me do it. But life is so beautiful. The universe will work to align things for you as long as you're being brutally honest with yourself of who you are and what your true nature is. And then use that energy into everything you put in.
I love it. I love it. Okay, we're going to take a quick break right now, and we'll be right back with What's Up Punta Cana with Christy Maggio. Don't go away.
Desde Bávaro, el mejor estudio audiovisual del este es Punta Cana Hits 90.3 FM, donde la frecuencia y la calidad se encuentran. Punta Cana Hits, lo mejor está aquí. Sintoniza y conéctate, no te lo puedes perder. Talk Show Bávaro, Trucamelo Radio, Good Morning Bávaro, sonido urbano, somos barrio. Perros Verdes, Mario Fama y Bozo, Punta Cana, Club Sabroso, programas que mueve la audiencia, no engaña. Punta Cana Hits 90.3, en la radio, en la web, síguenos a donde estés. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok y YouTube. Somos los líderes en cada esquina, en cada club. Punta Cana Hits, conéctate, vive por ti. 90.3, los más activos en las redes y en tu radio, sí. Sí. Punta Cana Hits, conéctate, vive por ti. 90.3, los más activos en las redes y en tu radio, sí.
Every Friday at 7 p.m., Punta Cana Hits presents What's Up Punta Cana with Christy Maggio, the #1 English talk show in the area, with the best that the Dominican Republic and the rest of the world have to offer.
Okay, we're back with What's Up Punta Cana with Christy Maggio, and we are here with Sumeet Syal, the Vice President and General Manager of Intel for their global sales and marketing, but also the founder of 3 Doshas. And I now want to get into that conversation because this is going to be the most enlightening part of our conversation. Well, everything's enlightening, but I want to start off with I want you to share the essence of 3 doshas in yoga and Ayurveda. And let's take it one step further and explain what Ayurveda is and how these energies uniquely shape our strengths, both in personal and in our professional lives, but also where did it, even before that, now I'm like, my questions are coming back and back. How did you say, I really want to do this? What was it that was lacking that you felt, wow, these people really need this?
Yeah. There's a lot of questions in there. So
Sorry.
give me some time to unpack each one. I love it. I think this is the conversation that inspires me the most. So first for the audience, right? Three doshas comes from a very ancient science from India, essentially, and it's from Ayurveda and yoga. Yoga and Ayurveda are two life sciences. They're sister life sciences, and they focus very heavily on the body and the mind and how to keep yourself intact through these life sciences of aligning your energies from the body and the mind aspect. Okay? So this is an ancient science. It's something that inspired me. It's something that I've actually always thought about as I have deployed these energies into everything I do, from, we talked about schooling to my career to my leadership and all the other aspects. And these energies this is the essence of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is a very deep science, and there's lots of research happening on this recently. It's a science that explains that each one of us, every single one of us, is built in a very unique blueprint, what we call the three doshas blueprint. And essentially what that means is, the science goes like this. The science says that at the time of our conception, when we came into existence, the elements of nature came together to build us. And there are three predominant energies that form us at the time of conception, okay? And these energies are in our body and they're in our mind, okay? And this is a science. There's a lot of Sanskrit you have to get through to understand this science, but it basically has the same analogy of what we talk about nature and nurture. And the Sanskrit words for these are prakriti and vikriti. But at the end of the day, what it's really saying is our nature comes from these elements of the environment, elements of nature that make us very unique in our own ways. So essentially what that means is each one of us has something unique, something profound. What I call, each one has some strength. And we call it the unique blueprint that you have. And at the end of the day, the science basically says, hey, these three energies at your body level are called vata, pitta, and kapha. And in the mind, they're called sattva, rajas, and tamas. Now, as I was thinking about how am I going to explain this to an American kid, like kids like my kids, and inspire them with this beautiful knowledge. So what I've done is I've basically distilled it, the science, down to something more fun, more interactive. And I've essentially now turned it into, we call it the air, fire, and water energies. Mm-hmm. So Vata's air, Pitta's fire, and Kapha's water. And then I kind of explain to people that, hey, if you keep these three energies intact, and it's a very deep science if you really want to learn it, these are the three energies that keep you in your true essence, your true nature. And if one of these energies gets out of balance, meaning you do too much in the air realm, the fire realm, or the water realm, you're going to get imbalanced. And the moment you get imbalanced, you're walking away from being your true self, your true nature. And that's when things go wrong in every aspect of your life. And it's funny, I was doing this with little children. I started this with my kids when they were little. And then I started trying this with high schoolers as they grew up. I took it to college students, and it's something that just dawned upon me that this is a very profound science, because genetic mapping in India is happening on this. As a matter of fact, UCSF here in the United States is now looking at personalized medicines based on the doshas of individuals. And I just saw a huge opportunity here to say, why can't we leverage this unique science into coaching children, into coaching executives? And then I took this one step further, and I was teaching, at Intel, a lot of leadership, and I started deploying this into my leadership coaching. And funny enough, it started working. People are like, wow, this stuff actually makes sense. And executives, I coach so many executives, and I talk about how they need to keep their energies intact, whether it's in their own personal blueprint or the blueprints of their teams and how they need to bring these energies into everything they do. So for example, I'll give you an example. The air energy is all about ideation, all the great ideas.
Mm-hmm.
The fire energy is all about action. And then the water energy is all about reflection. And I always explain this to executives that, hey, if you're forming a team, are you making sure you're bringing the right balance of all three of those energies? By that, I mean, are you bringing enough innovative people in your team? Do you have enough action-oriented people in your team? And do you have enough process-oriented people in your team? People that are going to do regulation, retrospection, make the processes better. And if it's the combination of these energies that you bring into yourself or into the environment that you're leading, and that's what makes it a balanced environment. And I've been using this for almost 5 years now, and it's really resonating with people. And I'm pretty excited about what I can turn this into, from a coaching perspective. So let me pause there, see if there's other thoughts that come to your mind.
Wow. I think that in and of itself, whether you're young, whether you're adult, whether you're, in the middle, understanding the concept of energy and how to make sure that it's in balance is really important. People go through life just thinking that it's just a bad day, or this is just my life. This is how it is. And they don't really understand the concept. And when you say that it's a science, it truly, truly is a science. There is a lot of research behind it. It's not just, this is just a fad. It's something that's been around for years. So give the audience an example, okay? So either personal from your standpoint, or working with young people or your team, and how have you helped people understand that, like, this energy is off or that energy is off, and so therefore you need to put it together and balance it? Because I think they're like, okay, well, I get that, but how then do I balance it?
Yeah. So Chrissy, I coach a lot of students specifically, and a lot of executives. And with students, it's a lot easier because they are like, they come in. So especially young people, if you have young people listening to this, so here's what I always explain to them. I'm sure their ideas are coming in your mind. So air energy is always there. We're getting ideas from social media, from friends, society in general. Then you take those ideas and you turn it into actions, right? Because you take an idea. Let's say you wake up and you say, you know what? I really want to do cooking today. Let's just take, for example, or anything you say. You turn that into an action. And once you go through the action, you then reflect on it. And you say, hey, how was that experience? And we do this in every aspect of our life, studies, career, anything we do. And what I explain to younger people is, especially young people, are not getting enough reflection. And in the science, it talks about kapha, which is the reflection property or the grounding energy that people must take seriously, right? So a lot of young people are like, well, I don't need sleep. I only sleep 2 hours, 3 hours, and I just need to do more. I just need to take a lot more action and I'll be successful. And I don't think a lot of them are realizing how important sleep is, because your body is actually going through, at subconscious and conscious levels, recuperation that you need to bring it back into its stability that you need for the next day to actually have great ideas and great actions go in. So I've always, in my teams have made sure that my people understand, hey, you got to keep each one of these three energies in balance. If you're working too hard and too much, you're going to burn yourself out. Make sure you're getting enough rest, right? If all you're doing is absorbing that mind with a million ideas and doing nothing with it, you're going to get your air energy out of balance. And that's what causes anxiety, right? So the air energy, if it goes out of balance, is what causes anxiety. And if you're reflecting too much, it actually causes a lot of reflection, retrospection, which can actually over time lead to depression. So I explain this to people at a scientific level, because that's what the science is all about, that you got to keep each one of them in a healthy balance. And if you do, you're bound to be successful.
What about you know, because as you're sitting there saying it and you're like, you know, a lot of times young people are like, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for it. And I think I work with, I work on both ends of the spectrum. I have those that are just like, boom, like up here, you know, they are power packer. They're just going after everything. And then I have those that are here that they're just kind of like, oh, I got to go to school today. Not really looking forward to it. I guess it's just something I have to do. And there's not a lot of motivation there. And I think that in that sense, I often struggle with trying to find different young people's motivation, even adults' motivation. But and I think then this probably falls more in the reflection side. How do you get those that just like don't care or are lazy or whatever it is? Like, I mean, how do you balance that energy? Have you ever had to do that before? I'm sure you have.
You bet. It's such a great question, Christy. So the way the science explains it is, listen, all of us have these three energies in us. Mm-hmm. There may be times where we actually get stuck in one of these energies. So like reflection, as you bring up, you know, how do you get the motivation? If you're just stuck in the water energy, how do you get them out of that energy? And the science basically says, hey, what has happened is you've got way too much of this water energy, the kapha energy. And what you really need at that time are maybe new ideas in your head, right? So you need a bit more of the air energy. So if you have no motivation to do anything, you know, you ever seen parents say, hey, just go out, meet some friends, and maybe some ideas will spark something in you, right? Mm-hmm. And then, you know, some people will say, well, I don't want to go out. I don't want to do anything.
Right.
I just want to stay where I am. And I think what the science would say is you've actually taken that one energy to the extreme. And that is why you're sitting in the form of, call it depression, call it no motivation, call it whatever, right? And the beauty of this science is that we go through these energies through all phases of our life. So we may be in one of these energies and stuck there in a phase of our life, but that doesn't mean that's how we're going to be all our life.
Right.
Right? What that means is you may be stuck there, but you got to bring these other energies to balance it out. So get some good ideas or go take some action, go work out, go do something, go for a walk, go hang out in the nature. And as long as you're balancing these energies, you can eventually get yourself unstuck in this one energy and move all three energies in a way that you can come back to your true balance.
Wow. Yeah. And I think that that's really, really important. And I'm sure that as part of your blueprint, that is all part of this. So as we run close to time here, I want you to, what is something that you really feel is important to share with the audience as far as something that we didn't cover, that we haven't spoken about, but that you really feel like this is something that I also need to make sure that I get across?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that I'm inspired by this, that I think everybody hopefully takes away from this is we need to really be honest with ourselves about who we are, right? This whole science basically says, hey, listen, each one of us is unique. The blueprint, the three doshas blueprint that we have on our website, you know, essentially what I've done is I've basically said, hey, come on over, get a blueprint on yourself. Doesn't matter who you are. You have something unique. You have some superpower, some gift. Once you identify what that gift is and you tap into that energy from that energy lens that you have now understood, it's basically a self-awareness tool if you think about it. If I can make you more self-aware of some unique superpower that you have, your motivation of what you want to do goes up. Your drive to take actions goes up. So the way I do this is I say, okay, I'm going to go coach you. But before I can even coach you, we're going to talk about who you are. We're going to talk about what your superpowers are. what your unique blueprint is. So it's essentially a self-discovery tool. Once you've discovered it, we then go deeper into making sure that once you know your energy, how you make that energy work for you towards any goal you want to achieve. That could be career growth, making money, getting a promotion, having a healthier, happier life with your spouse, your family, whatever you have in mind. And once you have the self-awareness, we then go into deploying the energy in the environments where you want to deploy it. And then I also do a lot of this with executives, where we get stuck a lot of times about how to bring people together. And executives doesn't mean leadership can be in different places. Leadership can be in a family. Leadership can be in corporate environment. It's how you make all these different energies work within a group environment. So my one message would be appreciate everybody for who they are, because everybody brings something unique. It's how you deploy those energies, appreciate the diversity, and make it work. That's kind of what I think of.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So let's close with where they can find you. I know it's 3doshas.com. Social media, I think, is LinkedIn, Sumeet, Sumeet, Syal, Syal, and any other.
No, you got it. You got it. Just reach out to us through LinkedIn. We also have 3 Doshas on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in learning more about this, just go to 3doshas.com, get a blueprint on yourself. If you're interested in coaching, if you're interested in just having more conversations about this, we host some community sessions where you can come in and learn this knowledge more. And I would also say go out and search for yourself this ancient science. It's a profound science. It's taken me a decade to understand. I think you'll be mesmerized in the knowledge base there. So
thank you so much. Thank you for being on here. Sumeet, Syal, everyone. And this is the end of What's Up Punta Cana with Christy Maggio. So until next time, okay, have a good day. Bye-bye.
With stories that open every door. What's up? Punta Cana with Christy Maggio, right here for you. What passion meets success, inspiring dreams come true. From entrepreneurs to hidden gems, each story shows what life can lend. Tune into 90.3, feel the vibe, get inspired too. What's up, Punta Cana, bringing dreams to you. Are you ready to dream, to reach for more? With stories that open every door. With Christy Maggio, right here for you. What passion meets success, inspiring dreams come true. From entrepreneurs to hidden gems, each story shows what life can lend. Tune into 90.3, feel the vibe, get inspired too. What's up, Punta Cana, bringing dreams to you. Entrepreneurs to hidden gems, each story shows what life can lend. Tune into 90.3, feel the vibe, get inspired too. What's up, Punta Cana, bringing dreams to you. El mejor estudio audiovisual del este es Punta